Hi there, my name is Dr. Katie Saint, and this video is about data collection. I actually get teased because I like data so much. I find it really useful, and I think it's so much better than our memories. So I'm going to dive into why we take data, how we use it, why it's useful. Hopefully after watching this video, you'll have a little bit better appreciation for data. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll get to it. All right, so data collection. Brad Brzezinski is a BCBA in our company who also is really passionate about data. He takes it in his personal life as well as at work. And so I asked him once, like, what do you love so much about it? Why do you appreciate it? And his answer was, I think my favorite thing about data is that it helps show a pattern to a seemingly chaotic and random series of events. And I loved that because it's so true. Sometimes parents will say to me, or different people will say to me, like, it happened for no reason. Like, I don't understand. He never did this before. Now, all of a sudden, he's having all these problem behaviors. I don't know what's going on. But when we start to investigate, when we dive in and we look at the data, we find out there is a pattern and it's not chaotic. It actually makes sense. And we have a clear path as to how to fix it because the why is clear. So I love data for that reason. I think it gives hope in situations where it feels kind of hopeless, like we don't have answers. So data is used for a lot of different things. So one thing data is used for is facts for progress. When you're living it, sometimes it's hard to feel the progress. If the behavior isn't completely eliminated or if the new skill isn't completely developed, sometimes it's hard to see and feel the progress. So when we have objective numbers that we can look at, it really helps to see like, okay, we're on the right track. We should keep with it. Our efforts are worth it. Data is really helpful for giving us clues. Sometimes just living our life, we wouldn't pick up on these patterns and we wouldn't notice like, oh, Mondays, this always happens. So there's something going on with Mondays, or it's always in the morning, just different things like that. Sometimes we just wouldn't pick it up. But when we start to take data on it, we do see that pattern. And so then that can help us kind of problem solve around barriers or obstacles that are getting in the way of achieving our goals. Data also gives us information as to if our efforts are worth it or not. So take the gluten-free diet, for example. It's kind of expensive and it's kind of high maintenance. Like it's a lot of work to follow that diet to a T. So say you're starting a gluten-free diet because you're hoping it's going to help your kids' behavior improve. So we could take data on that as soon as you start this treatment. We could have baseline data to compare it to. And then a month or two into your gluten-free diet, we can look at the data and say like, okay, you've been doing this now for a while and there's zero behavior change. Or there's massive behavior change and it really seemed to help. So we can use that data to make an objective decision that your efforts were worth it and that things are going the direction you want it to. Versus sometimes we start multiple things at once, we're not tracking data on it. And so we're saying, yep, it's working, when really it was something else that caused it. And so we're giving credit to the wrong things. So if we take data in a scientific manner, we can get really good information. So we're not wasting our time and our money on things that aren't worth it. So this is helpful for our treatment plans. This is helpful for our reward systems. That way we can move with confidence, knowing that our efforts are worth it. What we're doing is having the impact we intended. So another thing that data is used for is insurance companies. They look at the science that says if you're taking data, you're more likely to reach your goals. If you're taking data, you're more likely to make progress and not waste time. So all of our insurance companies require it. We have to submit data to them to prove that we're working on our goals, that our goals are making progress. And so it helps us get funding when we can show that data. Another really valuable thing about data is it helps us keep our treatment on track. So without taking data, sometimes it can be really easy to not realize that a goal has plateaued, or even that a goal has been mastered and it's ready to move on to the next step or the next goal. So if we're staying on top of checking our data and staying on top of tracking it, then we're going to intervene and make corrective action if we're not making progress, or we're going to add those new goals and take that next step right away so we don't waste any time with spending too much time on something that we didn't need to. The ultimate goal is to make meaningful change in the quickest amount of time, right? We all want to make progress, we all want to reach our goals, and we can do that efficiently when we're staying on top of our data. So there's different types of data. Frequency, rate, and duration are super common ways we take data. A lot of times that kind of data is for problem behavior. So we want to know how often is he hitting, kicking, screaming, crying, biting, so we're just going to track the frequency of it. Okay, it's happening 10 times a day. Sometimes we want to know within a time frame. So we would do rate for that. So it's happening 3 times an hour. And so this will allow us to graph it out and chart if it's getting better or worse. Duration is something that we sometimes take separately or even at the same time. So for example, maybe we're tracking tantrums and the duration got way shorter. It used to be 3-hour tantrums, now it's only 5-minute tantrums, but the frequency stayed the same. So if we were only taking frequency data, it would look like we're not having progress. But when you add in the duration, it's significant progress. So sometimes we need to take data in multiple ways in order to show that we're headed in the right direction. So this can be really encouraging too, if you're not feeling the progress, because sometimes when you live it, it's just hard to really see the progress. So this can be helpful. So next is latency, time sampling, and permanent products. So do you have a child who maybe doesn't listen? I know this morning I did. So, I told him like, hey, it's time to get changed and comb your hair. And he said, okay, mom, then didn't do it. So the latency ended up being like 30 minutes, right? So this is a super common problem and we treat it in our treatment programs all the time. When we do that, a lot of times we take what's called latency data. So latency is the time in between when you told them what to do and the time that they actually did it. So the goal is that that time is going to get shorter and shorter. So when we take data on it, we can objectively track if our treatment is working and if we're actually making progress with getting kids to listen quicker. So time sampling is something that we commonly use when working on social skills. This can also be used for attending too. So you pick a specific moment in time that you check in. So if I was doing it on social skills, I might have a play date set up for my kiddos, and then I would check in every 5 minutes. How are their nonverbals? How are their listening skills? Are they doing interactive play or just parallel play? I might have a list of objectives that I want to just track. Is this happening? And so then I can compare, like, how is he doing compared to last play date when I did these momentary time samplings? Is he improving in these areas? So last one is permanent products. This is when you have physical evidence that something occurred. So a common example is just cleaning your room. We can look at the room and see objectively, like, did he do it or not? You could do this for daily living skills like cooking. The permanent product would be the end product that was cooked. So sometimes we take data in this way where we look for physical evidence that it actually happened. Next is ABC data. So this is a really valuable tool when we're investigating why a behavior is happening. So a big part of ABA is understanding the function of behavior, and how we figure out the function many times is through our data investigation. So one of the things that we do is we look for patterns. And the first thing we want to look at is the antecedent. what happened immediately before the behavior occurred that could have been a trigger. So say you gave a demand and then the child starts hitting and kicking and things like that. If we look at the antecedent and see like, oh, you gave a demand, that would tell us the hitting and kicking is probably escape behavior. So if we know why it happened, that it was escape behavior, that tells us how we're supposed to respond. So if we take ABC data and we notice this is a really common pattern, almost every time I place a demand, problem behavior occurs. Then we could write a whole behavior plan around escape behavior. We could reinforce the alternative behavior, and we have a clear path as to how to fix that problem behavior. So the other piece that's really important to look at with ABC data is the consequence. One of the lawful principles of behavior is that whatever happens immediately after a behavior, it's going to, if they like it, it's going to increase it. If they don't like what happens immediately after a behavior occurs, it's going to decrease it. So sometimes we accidentally reinforce behavior when we don't mean to. So it's really important to look at what happens immediately after the behavior, because unconscious learning is occurring whether we realize it or not. And so if a child's having a problem behavior and he likes the results of what happens after, it's going to keep happening. So if we track data on this, if we notice patterns, then we can change it. We can change these consequences. We can change the environment. We can set things up so we're reinforcing what we want to see more of, so that those behaviors are the ones that are effective for our clients. So here's an example of what an ABC data sheet could look like. Sometimes all we do is just like check boxes, so it's quick and easy to measure what happens. So you can see here you have the antecedents where they can just check, was it a demand, were they told no, were they like alone, not getting attention? And then you can mark the behavior and the consequence. Sometimes an ABC data sheet is going to be blank and we have people just write it in because people would rather describe what happened with their own words. So either way is a great way to track it, as long as we have a way of looking for these patterns in these three areas. This is an example of a scatter plot. So this is another really helpful way to investigate behavior. This is going to show us patterns with time of day, day of the week. So if you look at this scatter plot, this child is having problems in the morning and at night, but only on certain days of the week. So it looks like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the problem behaviors occur in the morning. But Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, they occur at night. So what we would want to do with this information is look at like what the heck is happening on those days that could be contributing to this. This kind of information would be really valuable to help us kind of figure out like there's something about these days of the week that trigger these behaviors. And so we could make a plan around this and solve the behavior potentially. So this is an example of a graph. We commonly graph behaviors, and I love graphs because like you can see in this graph, there's up and downs in behavior. So behavior almost never has like a linear straight path. Usually you experience some up and downs. And when you live the up and downs, it's so common where it's hard to feel like progress. It's hard to like feel confident you're doing the right thing. Some behavior plans take months to eliminate the behavior. And so if you don't have an objective way to know that your efforts are worth it, sometimes you want to give in, sometimes you want to give up and just not do it anymore. So if you have a graph like this, sometimes that helps to push through, and that helps to know like, okay, if I look at my data in January, they were doing it 23 times a day. Now they're down to 10 at most. So we've cut it in over half. We're on the right track. We just got to keep going. You know, so sometimes graphs like this can provide hope, or they can tell us like, whoa, hit the brakes. We need to do some corrective action. we're not making progress. So we need to intervene and do something different. So these graphs can give us just really helpful information to help us move forward, make progress, and not waste any time on things that are not working. So to conclude, data is your friend. It helps you. When we take good, accurate data, it's just going to make our treatment more effective. So, we like to stay on top of our data and analyze it and use it to guide treatment so that everybody can get the best quality care with accurate information that isn't biased by our memories or our skewed situations that maybe can blind us to what's really going on. So if you want to see more about your data, if you want to learn more about your data, reach out to your treatment team and we're happy to share it with you, go over it in detail and kind of analyze the patterns together so that you can be in the loop with it as well. Thanks so much for listening.